So, welcome to all of you, and welcome to the people who are watching it live on the webcast from US, Europe, and the team in Great Lakes Institute of Management. So, welcome to all of you. So, we have people who are participating in viewing the webcast from teams in US and Europe. So, in the absence of our president, I'll take the honors of introducing and inviting all of you. So thanks to all of you for participating in our panel discussion, and thanks to Lakshman for really driving and moderating the panel discussion as we go ahead.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you who come here. I think probably with the combination of rain and Durga Puja and all the set of it, the participants have come are few, but along with you and the people who are watching it live on the webcast, well, that's okay. It's okay. Okay. So we'll take our thoughts from here, and we'll pose our questions as well to the audience. So, thank you. So, Lakshman, may I please ask you to take the honors in terms of having the panel discussion?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. We have a wonderful panel today. Excellent panel. The topic, as you already know, that we are going to talk about. There are various levels of management style, right? Should management be centralized, decentralized, or centralized? Then we added one more dimension to it to make that discussions much more insightful and interesting. And so first, focusing on the centralized theme, I would like to invite Parvez Alam. I'm taking that order so that easier. Please, Parvez. Parvez is actually having experience in automobile industry for a very long time, and he's also leading a board member and vice president of PMI Chennai chapter. Right? It's like similar to Karthik Ramurthy last time he came. He also loves project management, and he dedicated half of his work life, or maybe like half of Parvez is dedicated for project management. Because he comes from the industry background, and he felt that centralized control is, I think, is the right thing to talk about. So he picked the topic, and I thought he'll be the right person to talk about the management style perspective. Next, I would like to invite Professor Titian, and he basically, please sir. He has main expertise is actually in research and operation research. And two important things I would like to mention about him. One, he is actually a musician, and he loves playing veena. He loves so much to his heart. And two, he loves mentoring people and building, research scholars. A lot of students he mentored are in the US and doing wonderful things. And he basically is going to talk about decentralized approach is the right thing to do. Next, I would like to invite Prem Kamble. And he has more than 30 years of experience. And primarily, his experience is in the end user community, not so much in the IT product vendor or service community. So, a few years he had a stint with, he has some time he spent with the Polaris, but majority he spent more time close to the end users. So he understands the the politics of change management. He understands the when to say no, when to say yes to the customers, and he's basically the kind of a wonderful bridge between the IT service provider, solution provider, and the client he loves doing the job. And also he is actually an author of a book called God in 2 Minutes. I had a couple of hours chat with him in a coffee shop. Oh man, he gives a lot of interesting stories, and he loves spirituality. Next, I would like to invite Raj Shankar. Raj Shankar is actually, again, a very interesting personality. I know him for quite some time now. As an entrepreneur, he's actually also an entrepreneur. Before that, he was working with iFlux and Deloitte. More in the consulting frame of mind. Okay, his passion is to create a think tank in India. The way, okay, so if you look at myself, I want to build a made in India product. Okay, that the India patriotism dominates in my mind. And similarly, he wants to build a think tank like the McKinsey, right, and Boston Consulting in India, and he has experience, spending a lot of time in Japanese. That's why he picked the name called Ichiban. It means number one, right? And as a consultant, entrepreneur, and he do a lot of consulting, strategic, business management, and so on. Look at the mix, non-IT industry, project management, and then the great professor, academician. He has done a hell lot of paper presentations and submitted a lot of papers, and he helped a lot of people submit the papers. He'll help a lot of people do research and so on. Then the people, Prem Kamble and Raj Shankar. So, without spending much time, I would like to start looking at perspective of starting with the same order. I would like to ask a question, and of course, the first round, all four of them, they're going to spend about 3 minutes sharing their opinion about exactly what they think is the right idea, right approach to do. And Parvez, I start with you. Why centralized management? Is it relevant in the 21st century? Later on? Okay, later on we can talk about that. Maybe I'll try to pick as close as possible, where you pull at power, you try to harness the power and control. Of course, there is a wisdom guy and so on. I thought this is something, I'm not an expert in Mahabharata, but I know a little bit, something close to it. And this entire, presentation, I used horse as a theme. I took horse as a theme, and I didn't pick this time. Let's see, I try to pick as much close meaning as much as possible. And Parvez, it's to you now.
Yeah, thanks LP, and I thank Knowledge Community for giving this wonderful opportunity. In fact, last time when I came for this Knowledge Community, I think LP was the moderator, one of our board member was presented as a panelist. So fortunately it was in the next room where it was the two divisions. So first he said the people who are supporting this topic come to this side, people who are supporting this topic come to that side. I think fortunately I have not made decision and here, and because this when the world is, you made a very right question, that is it relevant in 21st century. So in the sense that I would say that from the industrial age perspective, the centralized top-down approach was the approach available in the management. Now whole world, in this we can say that from industrial age we are moving to the knowledge age, where is all whole about talking about decentralized, more controlled, self-managed perspective. So I want to start with the phrase and leave a thought about it. And so there is an English phrase called different strokes for different folks. So I just compared this phrase with our panel topic. Should management be centralized, decentralized, or self-managed? So then I break out this phrase into different strokes plus different folks. So here we are talking about what is the different strokes. Should management be centralized, decentralized, or self-management? I said, okay, you should have added some more topic. Say that it should be what folks it is. So different folks should be different folks. So I leave a thought here, saying that in fact I don't want, I haven't said that LP that you should have changed this topic at this moment. But what I am saying is, in this world, there is no one size fits all solution. So that's setting this context. I just want to leave it to next person, so that I have a lot to talk about on centralized, because I am from the centralized management. So I have a passion to talk about more on the centralized management. So let's talk more on this. So leaving a thought here.
So, do you think the decentralized approach lead to higher performance or lot of internal conflicts and fight? When you decentralize, we start with you, sir. Yeah, fine.
Well, to start from where Parvez left off, it's not only different strokes for different folks, it is also for different situations. Okay. For many of the long-term goals, I would vote for decentralization. But if you're in a situation where, let us say you're in a factory, there is a rush order from a customer and you have to dispatch it the same evening, their democracy is not going to work. You just summon all your resources and just force them to work. So I think the situation also matters. It's not just the people that we approach. I do believe that in the long run, it is decentralization, delegation, and empowerment that would give us the best results, and it would be the most sustainable. I will perhaps use an example which all of you will relate to, though you may not be part of that. You know IIT and you know several other engineering colleges in the state. Now many of the colleges have very strictly regulated entry time and exit time for their faculty. They have to come in, sign, etc. IIT, there is no such system. We come in and go out as we please. You may find one professor checking in at 6 a.m. in the morning and another professor who comes in only at 11 but is there till late in the night. Each person has its own time. The only thing that binds them down perhaps is the timetable and the class timing, which we will certainly stick to. That will not be violated. But otherwise it is each member's convenience. In terms of output or performance, I leave it to your judgment as to who is delivering. Okay. So that's just one case of a decentralized setup working much better. In fact, in some of these universities, what should I say? The big boss would not have seen more than half the faculty. There's perhaps no need to. At the most, the head of the department would get to see. And if you look at again, for example, different folks, different groups, I would think that R&D organizations, R&D setups certainly require quite a bit of decentralized.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Prem.
Well, I think what I'll do is maybe for the first thing I'll stand up and say, and then when we get into discussion probably I'll sit and talk. I'll be a little more comfortable, free. Like decentralization gives you freedom and I need freedom. You get space. Yeah, I prefer to have it this way. But of course when we get into discussion we'll... See, I personally am a strong believer that any system or any law has to be in sync with the universal law for it to be successful. I think by naturally, the natural universal law, I mean, it has to be in sync with the natural universal law. And I think people are naturally, they are people with drive. People have the drive to achieve. They have a desire to succeed. People naturally want independence. They want freedom. So initially I will talk only more about the decentralized system and the merits of it. And when we get into discussion, probably we could talk about pros and cons. This is the system which gives you both. And I believe it's in sync with the natural universal law. Because with this, you're going to give the freedom for the person to decide. You're not going to tell him you do this. When you tell a person to keep doing something, you give him instructions, he doesn't feel so free to do things. Here you're just going to give him an objective and say that this is the work to be done, you decide how to do it. There's a lot of freedom. When there's freedom, there's a lot more motivation to do the work. You're more motivated to do the work. The quality of the work will be much better. The person at the top is less stressed. I feel the person who's doing the job is also going to be less stressed if he's if he's not been driven. And I believe there's a big social benefit also. If all of us are less stressed and tired, our families will be happy, the world will be much happier.
Productivity will be higher.
Productivity, of course, the quality of work is there, decisions are faster, and of course all that. But I'm saying even look at the world is going to be better because there are going to be better people who are less stressed and less tired. Thank you.
Now, Raj, so when I actually called up as Raj, Shankar, because I know him quite some time, I didn't tell anybody, to speak on this particular topic. And I was wondering whether I get a speaker for that. And when I called up, Raj, this is the thing. Within a fraction of a second, he said, I'll take self-managed. So here's a question to you. Will freedom to self-manage go out of control or boost performance?
Let me just share my thoughts of why self-management is going to become important. Traditionally, I don't know if any of you have read the Puranas and all that. Typically what happens is that before going to work or before starting your life, they spend the first few years training you to live life. So what is training to live life? It is basically managing oneself, as Peter Drucker or somebody wrote about it. So what happens is you spend enough of time learning how to live life, and then after that you're taught some skill. If you're a Kshatriya, you're whatever, you're taught some skills to go back and practice it. So what happens when this person goes into the ecosystem, he is able to practice his skill for coexistence, less stress, less friction, overall growth, etc., all this stuff. But within a boundary, which is typically top-down, centralized, if it's a small kingdom with a king or something. In today's circumstances, you have business organizations trying to do very similar stuff, but the input who come to work have not gone through that system of trying to manage oneself. I haven't come across even one B-school curriculum which has a course that says manage yourself first before you manage others. I have spoken to a lot of learning and development executives at organizations. There are leadership training programs, how to manage others from 101 to I don't know what number, right? But there is no 100 or 0 course also on how to manage yourself. And I'm not talking about time management and goal setting. That's not the management I'm saying. I'm talking about evolution, how do you grow, how do you coexist, which is basically less stress. And the other thing is, we've always been taught about competition throughout the life. So what happens, we are always taught that if we have to evolve, it is always by stepping, fighting and moving over, not really evolving as people. So in today's circumstances, thanks to Maslow, we are not starting at physical needs. Most people in today's, except for the people who are not here probably, there are a lot of people here who we don't start at, physical needs. We're not really looking like, if you put pressure, you will get work done. You have to really allow the person to discover himself. But this question is very pertinent. How far should I allow the person to discover himself? And what happens if he discovers, what happens to me? That I think is where the critical thing is.
Great. So tell me, open questions to all four of you. Which style you think that will make a mediocre and average performer into a great performer? The focus is on the individual. What kind of management style that is ideal, perfect for making them a super performer? So, you can randomly pick. There's no proper sequence.
Okay, I'm all for empowering the individual. Okay, so the decentralized style. Of course, you put a question, so I'll keep some of my other thoughts for
please,
later.
Please,
Yeah.
just our...
in fact, I would say that I've even had this experience with a research student, where the empowering and the freedom that was given made a big difference. It was a case of a PhD student who had actually joined under a colleague who was a total believer in complete autocracy and control. Okay. And at the end of about 2-3 years, the fellow was nearly in ruins, and the guide at that time actually wanted him expelled from the institute. However, our dean did not see enough justification for the expulsion, And he just told this colleague of mine, well, if you do not want to supervise his research, you just lay off, I will find somebody else to guide him. And he turned to me and said, this was in the doctoral committee meeting, he just turned and said, you take him over. He didn't ask me, can you take over? He just said, you take him over. Initially it was a shock for me because he was not even directly in my subject area of specialization. And he said, doesn't matter, you find a co-guide. So that is how he came to work with me. And I did find a co-guide for him in a mathematics department. He worked on reliability engineering and all that. Again, many people were hesitant because this is a controversial case, but a very senior professor who was no more accepted, and he advised this boy. He said, intelligence is God-given, but hard work is entirely in your hands. So you just give that part, and let me assure you, all will be well. And mind you, by the time he had completed all of his work and he came up for the final presentation in the doctoral committee, the head of the department said, this is a miracle. Okay. No, that is just one case.
So is it the shift is more on managing the ego kind of thing? Is it something egoistic person need to be managed
just about giving confidence to the
motivation,
individual. And if you build on giving confidence to an individual, you can make a genius out of that. Okay, I mean, we have to believe that most people are born with inborn intelligence. Everybody has some talents and some weaknesses. We should be able to cover up for their weaknesses and exploit their talents to the maximum.
The management talks about tight rope and loose rope concept. Yeah. So you give it loose, and when it's out of control, then you pull the string kind of thing. Any thoughts on this frame?
Yeah,
that you can use it.
Hello. Yeah, I talked about the merits of distributed management. Yes, but I think there are rules of the game also. It will definitely work. But as I said, the rule of the game is that you have to set the person who's going to decide on the objectives. I mean, I don't say it's going to be distributed in the sense it's going to be a combination of a hierarchy, but with a lot of delegation and empowerment, as Professor said. So in this case, the person, when you delegate, you have to have the objectives set very clearly. That's the, as I say, rule of the game. When you set the objective very clearly, people are independent. They can decide on their own. They can make corrections in different situations. They can think on their own. Now, if you delegate without setting the objectives, they're going to be groping in the dark. Number two, they should have enough authority. Do you call that objective as a centralized control or something, or is something like a high level? What is his objective? When I say objective for that person, you are to do this because not only what you're doing, but what is the prime objective of doing what you're doing? So, typically when an objective is very clearly defined, objective of why he has to do what he has to do. Okay. You're not just giving him a task, but you're explaining him also very clearly why he has to do what he has to do, what is the prime objective, which is in line with maybe the organizational goal. So you're putting all these things together and giving him a goal, that your goal is this, and you work for it. How you do it is your baby. Of course, I'm there to guide you, but you have to find out methods. When he is given that independence to do how he wants to do it, rather than being told that, this is the way you have to do it, I think he feels more motivated. At the same time, he can innovate. There's two things. One, you are saying what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. Not how it is to be done, what needs to be done, why it has to be done. Why it has Objective. Objective. Goal. What is the goal? Because whenever the goal is clear, he will always correct himself and look at the goal. You may lose your way for some time, but if your goal is your goal is on your sight, you will always make the right correction. With new technologies, you will still see that, maybe yesterday I was doing it like this. Yesterday I was using a car and maybe I was driving like this. But today I have got an aircraft and I have to go there. I might fly. Okay. Raj, take a shortcut. Now I want to, I'll come back here. Raj, now from your, self-realization, when you talked about self-awareness perspective,
is it saying, do this or objective? And why do you think that the individual takes the, kind of initiative, say that this is what I want to do and align myself to this particular organization goal?
Okay,
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I just want to turn the focus to this question once again, because this question is asking, can I make that person a better performer? That means I want him to flourish or blossom in the activity per se. Whether he is successful or failure, I'm not really bothered, but I want him to be blossoming when he is doing that activity. So if he has to be activity focused, I feel the only way he can blossom per se is to discover what is that activity that he has to be involved with. Now, most often we tend to fall into activities because of various external factors. Now, we don't have an ecosystem or a mentor who says, okay, Raj, this is not the way, experiment something else. And I'm here to help you till you find what you are actually born for. And the trouble with a lot of people is we get stuck along the way and we say, okay, enough of experimentation because somebody else has lost patience or I have lost patience or whatever. So I think one of the things that self-management professes and all our Vedantic works profess is that a little bit, a failure in your own dharma or your profession is better than being a success in an alien profession, which is what Sri Krishna himself said. So what I'm saying is that thing has to be transferred, but for that we need an ecosystem that says, I will allow the plant to grow to a certain size, till then I'm there to protect, after that it's become a tree.
Is the society the culprit here?
I'll leave it at the ecosystem level and not blame any particular person.
Parvez, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. I think LP, I don't know whether you are doing a fair job. You wanted me to start, and you have a very two senior professionals on the decentralized, and one more guy, more level of self-managed. So I think the audience are mesmerized now. So I have to again brush up thoughts. Going back to my lesson number 1, it's a different strokes for different folks. And if you're talking about worst performer to better performer, are we talking about individual performance or team performance? So team performance, see, you talk enough about Apple, but Steve Jobs, he has made success not because of his individual. In individual, you are saying he is like a Hitler, but he made Apple because of the company. He made this Apple #1 company because of team performance. Team performance. So team performance is, so for team performance, which management style is better? So I would say that, okay, we are a little bit biased with our IT industry, but we have to also see the GDP is not only come from IT, it's also come from manufacturing, and all your services will go for manufacturing. So still coming back to my thoughts that centralized management is the better way if you go and approach with situations like Sir said. If it demands for centralized situations, then centralized management is the best.
Excellent. So next question also, first I'll start with you.
I think now you are doing
No. It's a different perspective. See, now I'm just, we had a quick chat in the coffee shop with Raj. Say, you go back to 20, 30 years ago, you created an industry revolution, right? You created a factory and so on. And so then you created an ecosystem or a lot of laborers, workers, welders, fitters, and so on. Then obviously the command and control came from top. And they found that is the natural way of managing things because they didn't see any other better way. Today, say in 6th floor, if somebody is running a company and then you pressurize control as a particular person, the next day he'll press button number 5 and walk into another company to start working. Right? So that stress level was not perception, right? It's not realized during that industry era. But the question is that the kind of industry era? Today you're talking about, Hyundai, Oragadam and Ford here and so on. Is it a still valid and workable model, even today's industry revolutions, top-down approach?
So you're talking about this urbanized development.
No. See, once there is a factory, people don't have a choice. When I joined BHL, I retired from BHL, right? So very rarely people, walk out and attend an interview on something. But today in IT industry and any other industry, even in Ford, if you pressurize somebody, they'll go and join Hyundai. Okay. So that the freedom and flexibility was not there, 20, 30 years ago. So then you found this is the style, is the natural way of managing things. Today, people expectations are high.
So on a lighter note, you are saying that centralized management people will stay more and decentralized
No, no.
management people will
No, I'm not
turn
saying
around
that
more.
people used to stay more because there is no second option for them.
Okay.
But now, I don't know, but
Yeah.
still, from an industry standpoint, either the centralized model, still people are living okay with that model, or they're expecting something more.
Yeah, I think this, coming back to this self-managed, decentralized and all, even this Maslow hierarchy of needs is saying that only 2 or 3% reaches the stage of self-actualization. So we don't have all Bill Gates, Sri Ravi Shankarji, all the point of time.
Okay.
So in the sense that, so self-managed is maybe ideal, yes, I would love to be a self-managed person. I would like to be working in self-management. But having done my degree in automobile engineering, I want to work in automotive industry. So that industry calls for centralized management, so I am doing it. And like what sir also saying that we have our manufacturing industry, right? And we also do have a R&D setup where we do completely self-managed, decentralized approach. Same company, R&D center, where we do, because people are like a scientist type.
So what are you saying for shop floor, still a centralized approach?
Centralized approach is workable. And where you have to R&D, you cannot demand for this. Where they are writing patents, where they are doing innovations, where it calls for obviously as decentralized and much more. I don't personally believe self-management. Self-management still we can say, okay, as a management theory. But personally, how many companies would like to put that self-management into practice is still a question.
Raj, I mean, in my company, I'm trying to make everybody self-manage things. So I'm expecting more. Sometimes they feel a little pressurized because I'm asking them to do things a little bit more and a little bit better. So my question is that does it require a base, mindset? Not I'm talking about talent, base mindset and a little bit of talent to do self-management. If not, will it be a burden for them? Or is it naturally people are born to self-manage?
I mean, at a very philosophical level, everybody has to self-manage, but let's leave the philosophy for some time.
Okay.
At a very practical level, if you try to do self-management, practice managing oneself, allow people to decide what their levels of contribution are in an organization, and so on, you're going to have very high stress levels initially, because you're asking people to start doing their own work. You just tell your team for a day, okay, I'm not going to allocate any work to you, just go for the next 1 week and do whatever you want. They're going to go crazy, because they're so used to working with guidance. So one of the things that's going... No, that is a fallout. That's a fallout. That is going to happen. But the first level is there's going to be very high level of stress, because any type of individual work, a lot of people don't have access to the actual work done by an individual. So you go into an R&D lab, you think this person is at actually absolute peace with himself. Actually, the person is under terrible stress. So, and even when you try to oversee anything, you want to be very, very careful with these kind of people, because they are under stress and you're managing them under stress. So stress is an automatic fallout till the time that your whole ecosystem becomes capable of handling managing oneself. So it is like a utopian dream, I agree, that have everybody manage yourself, but somewhere along the way, I think we'll be forced to get there, because if we improve the people of the world, the living conditions and so on, nobody is at the lower level of Maslow's. So by default, that 2% at the top is very large. I mean, it will increase. So you'll be forced to go upwards, but maybe there's still time.
Excellent. Before we come back, let's open up some questions to the participants. Any questions to any of the panelists, please?
My question naturally goes to Dr. Saram first.
Okay.
Sir, this is with regard to, is there a discrete or an explicit white-collar, blue-collar distinction in the kind of tasks that you have in mind? The R&D and the research labs all can enjoy a certain level of self-managed and decentralization, and the blue-collar factory floors need a little bit of whipping. So centralization helps that process. So is there that distinction, and is that distinction relevant in this day and age today? And the second thought is an open thing to the entire panel, which is basically that Jacob Bronowski mentions that in the transition of the development of science and technology, and which is what all of us are discussing today, because that's at the heart of the whole thing. In the Ascent of Man, Jacob Bronowski mentions that the world has to make a transition from the aristocracy of the intellect to the democracy of the intellect. So before an organizational structure or leadership can even issue a command, it's in the intellect that you see whether an aristocracy is made or a democracy is made. And to the best of my understanding, in the day and age we're living today, whether it is IT or manufacturing or wherever, aristocracy is dead. We are in a democratic age, and so we should reinforce that. And command and control economies remind me of Soviet Union or the People's Republic of China and many other centralized structures and our own erstwhile license quota Raj. So I don't think command and control and centralization are any longer valid today, and that's my humble submission.
Excellent. I mean, let's start with.
I think, like first to take it to the first question. In fact, today morning we had a meeting that what is the target percentage for blue collar, what is the target percentage for white collar. So certainly we had a distinction between white collar and blue collar. And though you made a very good point, I would say that I will also touch upon some management theory to just counter argue that. So there is a theory X and theory Y. So that says people, there are theory X, it has to be supervised, and theory Y, where you can like a kind of a self-managed decentralized part of that. So having said that, there are you cannot take, and having all management theories are saying that you are trying to tend to move towards that theory X person needs to be, you need to promote them to a theory Y person, you need to develop them. So that concept is going on. So at the end of the day, there is a theory X person, he has to be supervised. And coming back to this blue collar and white collar, coming back to my own industry, I work for UCall Fuel Systems, an automotive component manufacturing industry. So we are handling a person who are not even an educated person coming here and working there. And how do you even expect them to talk about on something about, unless you supervise them, unless you told them this is need to be done. And our 80% of our employee strength is on blue collar. And that is casual laborers. And turnaround, I will tell you, you are talking about so much on HR perspective. They will come, join the company, within the 3 days they leave the company. Another guy will come and join the company, within 4 days they will leave the company. So we are worrying that whether we can give the uniform, he will come and get the uniform and go.
Excellent.
Whether we can, at least if we say for 1 month, we will give the uniform and shoes.
Excellent.
So that level of labor workforce we are operating. Even China, we are talking about so much. I want to tell this example. We are talking so much on Apple and all these things. Okay, I will tell a lot of things about this Apple R&D part. How, Steve Jobs said that if you don't, in fact, we have a factory in US where people, when we call on Saturday, they will keep their mobile phone on car on Friday evening, and they will only pick up the mobile phone only on Monday morning. When we call on Saturday, they will say, guy, it's the weekend. So that level of US, where Steve Jobs said, if you don't come on Saturday, you'll be fired on Monday. See, he operated that level of centralized management, but anyway, we'll talk about later. But what I'm saying is, since you told China, the big extended where our Apple products are manufactured, it's in Foxconn, China, where they say the basic humanities skills are not there. Many NGOs are trying to sue. What I'm trying to say, that is actually extended arm of Apple factory, right? So Apple may not have.
They heard that they have the dormitory and.
Yes, so that level of, so there you can't see, everybody would like to have a, like you say, the massive hierarchy is, I don't know whether fortunately or unfortunately, it's a triangle. So it says it's a pyramid where you have only 2 or 3% at top level, and below the level you will have a major workforce. So I think we should, okay, we are not talking about so much on the humanitarian perspective, like whether we are treating them or not treating them or not.
Very valid point. I think it's more on the ability to self-manage.
Correct.
I mean, that's absolutely.
That's their competency point. That we are not saying that, see, in fact, we are treating them equally. In fact, in many industries, whether you noticed or not, in fact, the executive director of the company in our company will take the same food in the canteen. The person who we are talking about, the 3-day or 4-day employee, who even, in fact, our company, they will say another term called Hindiwala. So even that person also taking the same food in the same canteen, the same chair.
Excellent, excellent. Any other question before we move on? Yeah. I'll come back here.
See, I think it should be a hybrid of all the three. I mean, centralized, decentralized, and then self-managed, right? So, yeah. I think because
I think everybody is supposed to say the same.
no, because right from the political thing to our right from the politics, Indian politics, the central government, state government, and then till the councillor level, or for that matter, any industry. It is a hybrid of all the three, and No, the question should be which hybrid model, which weightage. Say if I say 30 is to 20 is to 10 or some
Is it the
ratio.
ratio or the one he started with the things, different stuff for different person and different situation?
No, yeah. So you should be, telling us about which ratio or which proportion we should use this so that it will be more effective.
Excellent.
So I have a related question on the same front. So if you look at an organization, right? So organization driven by three things. One is the vision, the mission, and the action, right? So I would request the panelists to kind of throw light on what kind of management is required at the vision level, at the mission level, and the action level.
Sir, do you want to take up that too? No. Prem.
See, I'll start with the first question in the sense that, what is a mix? Now, the mix, we talked of situation and people, and most of the time we talk about people at the lower level. We talk of blue collared or white collared. Now, I feel that it also depends on the manager himself. So, see, when delegation is there, you need to train people. So, training is possible. Training, paucity of skills can be overcome by training. But one thing which cannot change is attitudes. So, a lot depends upon the attitude, and I'm saying not of the people below, it also depends on the person himself, or the manager himself. See, I would ask you a question. How many of you can actually sleep when somebody else is driving? Can somebody raise? How many can you sleep? See, there are some people I have seen, when somebody, they will be looking at the driver, So now, see, the type of management style a person has, even, so I'm
So you
saying,
don't know who is driving.
no, so the manager, it depends on the manager who is relegated to the driver, or in other ways what you're saying. So there are two types of this again. There can be a doubting Tom who says he will not do the work. That's one thing. When you delegate, if the manager himself is like that, who is a doubting Tom, he will not do the work. There's another type which says, I've given the work, but will he do it right? So when you are watching the driver, you are actually afraid, will he do it right? So both this type of character traits are available with managers themselves. So then you need a mix. If you cannot delegate, then better not.
So Raj, for vision, you was asking specific question. For vision, what style is better at the top level?
I think inherently, the higher you go, it is better to be self-managed. Like since we took the case of Steve Jobs, one of the things Steve Jobs, if you read the biography, comes across that he was running something like a reality field around himself. Now, where did he develop this reality field of saying, this is the way things would run? It is more at his level of saying, this is the way I see the world, and this is the way I want most of you in my field to also see the world. But at the same time, he also makes contradictory observations, saying that within that overall field, he was allowing these guys to really see it the way they want. Otherwise, he would have never got these products in the first place. So, I think at the mission level, because typically at the vision level, you have entrepreneurs or very entrepreneurial minds. It would be good if they are actually closer to being self-managed, and I think they are inherently. At the mission level, it's where I think it is getting bloated. In the sense, you have so many middle managers all over the place. Half of them don't know whether they should go up to vision or they should just go back to action. So at the action level, again, there's no confusion. You got to be told what to do, or you need to know exactly on your to-do list what to do. Now then action happens. Anything beyond discussing the to-do list, no action. It's just inaction. Right? So I agree with them, whether it's centralized, decentralized, whichever way you give the to-do list, work happens at the action level. The trouble is with the mission level. Now you don't know whether you want to think like Steve Jobs or you don't want to think like Steve Jobs. And you have a lot of people, and slowly with number of people joining and growing up and getting promoted every year, you just have so many people in between who are clueless whether I should be here or there. And I think that's where most of management problems are going to arise. What I do with all these managers who have nothing to manage.
Exactly. Or if you want to, sorry.
Yes. I wish to go on a slightly different track.
Okay.
Let me go down a level from the knowledge workers to factory. It is not as though decentralization won't work, democracy won't work. Let me give some examples. There are companies which re-engineered their factory, took us 7 long years and completely came to a cellular kind of manufacturing system. with a lot of empowerment and decentralization. And the workers were made multitasking workers. And there were many cases where they were told that maintaining the machine is your lookout, quality is your lookout. And initially our middle management was aghast at the suggestion that they can be trusted for quality. But finally it worked out, and most of these companies have not had to look back after this entire process was implemented. And there is another extreme in this case. One of these companies, again in the auto sector, they said, we don't want any trained people. They just went to school, picked up well-standard passouts, waited probably till they made sure that they're age 18. They said, we'll give the training. We don't want ITA or anything. They were trained to be multi-skilled from day one. And every day it is something like, today's target is so much, you can take the work, divide it in whichever way you want, but at the end of the day, we want this many units produced. And it is working, still working. Okay. The only thing is they made sure we don't want any experienced workers here because we want to bring in a new culture, and we cannot do it with existing people. So we will
bring in
take
excellent mix.
18-year-old kids straight from school and start building a
There's no change management.
Right.
You know, you create the way you want.
Right.
So before getting into, sorry sir, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. A little more on this. Now, in factory work, to certain extent, decentralization has come in. Okay, so even blue-collar work, but the only thing is the culture has to be built, and it takes a long time. Overnight, if you want, no. Short-term results, no. And one thing, this of course pertains even to it, you wax eloquent about teamwork, right? And finally, one fellow gets a promotion. Can you ever imagine the feeling of the rest of the team members? All of you have seen that happen,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Now, the only thing which I wanted to say was this. Let it be factory workers, let it be auto mechanics. There are people in the shop floor who would, by the sound of a machine, will detect that there is something wrong and alert, okay, call for your attention and say, this is not sounding right, the machine needs to be. There's a domain knowledge which they alone know. And I think it is important for management to recognize those kind of things. Yeah, what I wanted to particularly point out was this. I used to go as a judge for this quality circle competition in Anna University, where workers from industries who had formed quality teams and had effected improvement used to come and present their cases.
Excellent.
Sometimes even in Tamil, with PPTs, sometimes even with the product. The way they have done the analysis, the Y-way analysis, and, systematic, and it shows that you don't need a great deal of education to.
Excellent, sir. The one thing I wanted to point, excellent point, me and Pavesh was having a discussion in this restaurant in this building on 13th night, and so we were discussing about this panel discussion quickly, that's the first time, and then we didn't want to go out and wash hand outside. We asked him, can you bring a finger bowl just to quickly wash your hand and then start having a dinner? No, sir, you have to go out and wash your hand, right? Look at, that's one scenario. Right, he's a waiter. Another scenario, there is another restaurant I was going and having a dinner, and my son, after having 2 chapatis, normally he'll have 1.5 or 2. After having 2 chapatis, he wanted 1 more. Right, he can't take 2. And we asked the waiter, we want only 1 chapati, because normally the chapati comes with 2 pieces. Okay, there immediately says, no problem, I'll give it to you. So he gave and went in the bill, instead of putting 1 chapati, he put some other item. So here, look at the one waiter here in so-called the research park, right? And there is another small restaurant, right? And both of them, I don't think they'll be highly educated. Look at the behaviors. Look at the behaviors. So one, I think when we were discussing about that, even though it could be centralized control, but he's not going to get fired by bringing a finger bowl to just wash your hand. So even there is the blue collar or whatever it is, some level of intelligence, some level of control can be, provided. And that's a very interesting point to note. So, we discussed that. I want to skip it and very briefly, whoever have thoughts, you tell me, I'm not saying who is, I'm not making any conclusion here. Please tell me what is the Gandhian way of management from your own perspective.
Yeah, I think having sitting in centralized, I would say it's a centralized management. No, I will, if you want that rationally, I will also tell
No,
that.
that's
but
what
you-
you insight that we want. I mean,
Yeah,
tell me what made you to say that? I
No,
mean,
in fact, see, Gandhian management is that basically a central control. That is why, though there are so many controversial leaders, Jinnah, Nehru and everything were there, but he tried to bring the centralized control by his thoughts.
by what means?
He may be a self-managed person.
Okay.
So I just want to in fact reflect the same thought what Raj saying shared. At vision level, there should be a self-managed. Yes, at mission level, there should be a decentralized. At action level, there should be actually a centralized. So he may personally may be a self-managed person. Obviously, he is a self-actualization person. But his way of approach is basically, I would say, is a centralized control. So we are not talking about this again, that humanity perspective
No,
of dictating Hitler and all.
No.
We should not compare the Hitler management with the Gandhian management.
So
right?
this is what I want to bring in the beauty of centralized management. The centralized management need not be a Hitler's style. I mean,
Correct.
need not be a Hitler style.
Correct. And in fact, before leaving, I just want to have a thought that before, in fact, I just want to reflect the thought that what Professor said. In fact, there are a lot of development even at the worker level happened. In fact, if you see Japanese, we actually had a collaboration with Japanese company called Mikuni, where the very senior person will come and teach a shop floor person, even a housekeeping person, that how to swipe.
Wow.
So that is a different culture. But if we start a Japanese company there in Japan, and we need not to worry about much because they person by itself, even the tsunami crisis, they come and form a queue and then got it, all the reliefs and all. So by nature, those people are self-managed. Even if you put centralized policy, they will follow based on their self-management perspective. So there are so many things are happening, but at the same time, I just want to leave a thought because we are in India, that there is a National Skill Development Corporation, NSDC. Though they said the labor is the very biggest problem in the coming future of urbanization. So there has to be labor development. So they are developing so much of labor skill development center, especially like hubs, manufacturing hubs like Chennai, Pune, Delhi and all. So they are saying that the demand for labor is, and having said that, all the labor crisis having seen, I don't want to mention any company, having recently seen that labor issues of the manufacturing company, there is a need for the labor, and that labor, in fact in our company there is in labor also there is a permanent and temporary. In permanent, yes, we teach Japanese methods, they used to present in quality form, but in 1,000 they are 100.
Oh.
Again, this 900 is the proportional moving labors.
Okay.
So just want to leave
Very
that thought.
quickly, what do you want to say?
I think what is important to look at this person's way of this thing is, though he was highly self-actualized or managing himself, he was patient enough to accept that people around him were not. I think that is the biggest skill that you get once you start managing oneself. You start realizing that all others are not at your level. So you start developing empathy, you start developing patience, you start developing and allowing them to make errors. You allow them to and identify things that mean as empowerment at their individual level. So at different levels, like what Sir said, extending from that, we work with a civil construction company where we work with laborers. They are basically unskilled. So we were trying to find how to empower these guys. I mean, what can you do to make them? Everything is controlled, right? So we were saying that the project manager and the senior engineers could just find out from them what do they want to know. Some of them had very simple requests, like, can I learn this language? I am coming from Tamil Nadu, going to work in Delhi. Can I learn a few Hindi words? And the moment you start teaching them, and this guy starts using it back, he's so happy to come back to the site, and you don't have to tell him what to work at all. I mean, so when you say managing him and allowing him, you can even give that level of recognition at that level, find out what are their inherent needs at that level and service them. And productivity the project manager was so happy, he started getting, his output just started going high. So, but with respect to Gandhi, this is what I have learned, that I think managing oneself allows you to have more patience to coexist.
Excellent. See, sometimes centralized control. Let's take an example of China, right? There is a 40 people strategic team, and they define the vision, mission, action, and everything for the whole country, top-down approach. And whatever the end justifies means, and the end is better, and they slow by, But look at other countries like Indonesia, like Sugato or something, again take control. But sometimes when you're looking at the decentralized approach, if even one person fails, the other things could take over, dilute certain aspects. But if the centralized control, if the top is weak, injecting some wrong idea or objective, it will collapse the whole system. So is there a possibility that centralized management, it clone inefficiency across the company? Or how do you smell and how do you avoid that?
No, I think just going back to that from the pyramid point of view, it's not necessary that if you put some wrong vision, that you will end up in a wrong mission.
Okay.
It's not necessary that. So, in the sense that if it is a higher level, if the self-managed there is an issue, it's not necessary that you need to percolate down. And coming back to this, this your inefficiency part, that this is, I don't think that this will be, inefficiency is the issue in all areas. And I don't think there will be a, so I don't see that any issue in this.
No, I'll put it in a different way. But normally I say in a democratic country, if the governance is not good, you blame the people. Right? In a dictatorship, if the governance is not good, blame the leader.
But yeah, I see. In fact, I come from centralized, though I said I'm from centralized management. In fact, I want to take my company as an example. See, we have 10 multiple locations in Delhi, Pondicherry. In Chennai, there are so many manufacturing units and all. In fact, our company has gone into a little bit on Japanese. Sir knows that we want develop some Shoji Shiba techniques on all these things. So we said factory. We said factory within a factory. So much of things we talked. I'm hearing right. So we talked about so many jargons, and little bit we are given some decentralized control over a period of time. I think it's a fact that we lost control actually. So in fact, to the extent how it is look like is that we have so much units and so much decentralized. We have some corporate functions, but still people. So since it is decentralized, even the corporate function is also acting as a decentralized. Corporate function is supposed to act as a centralized. In fact, our chairman used to say, when you ask your corporate materials, what is the status? He will give company minus the bowel factory, in the sense north. North he will subtract and he will give. And north people have a tendency, that south wala, and south people has a tendency to north wala. So now we are bringing more centralized control. We are saying that it's a corporate function, and all planning will be done here, whether if the sitting is corporate. Whether the corporate sitting is north, again the all functions are done here. So it brings, in fact, you talked about inefficiency. In fact, I have some of the, I am going to talk about, I am expecting some slide, what is the merits of centralized. I have listed down so many points. The first point I said, it's a lower organizational and transactional costs. The cost, the transactional cost is the first merit of the centralized management.
So its transaction cost is lower.
Very, very low. And that we have in fact realizing it. Because so many, see, I will tell you in my, probably I don't want to take my example as a whole extrapolate into the world that this is going to be. But my example is that, okay, we have one factory, we have 10 factory. If you put 10 decentralized, we have 10, each department, each HOD, each department head. Rather it not necessary. So in that way, I think decentralized brings so much of cost addition and thereby inefficiency probably.
So tell me, what are the issues?
I think,
parameters for evaluating costs are then slightly skewed. Then you have to, if you are trying to look at cost, would you look at attrition rate? Would you look at the, say for army or that sort of setups, the rate at which the people, what they call it, matricide, I think, I don't know exactly, but people take suicide rates and people killing their officers is very high. Considering that you're pumping in a lot of money into the military, it's a very, very centralized structure. That's very high.
yeah, but sorry to my dear IT friends, the divorce is very high during in the IT industry where they are saying the stress is more, so that leads to a lot of divorces. So majority, so let us not go by probably a 1 or 2 case exception, thereby come to a conclusion. But what I am saying is that inefficiency perspective, this whole centralized control brings lot of similarities, standardized procedures, consistent processes. These bring lot of
technically I
stability.
understand, theoretically fine, but the moment that put the virus, thinking that this is the right thing to do, but how do you stop that at the top? Suppose if the top pushing down some inefficiencies. So how do you go back and correct the system? I'm not saying against centralized, but the centralized model.
But somebody can quote example. Is that any case happened like that?
Indonesia, or Libya, or you take Egypt, right? You can say only one good thing about China, the top-down dictatorship. Singapore, top-down dictatorships, kind of pseudo-democracy, because the leader vision is good, the genuine, percolate. But the moment the top is corruption, then the dictatorship works in a different manner.
I think they're still efficient, yeah. But I think they're extremely efficient, either ways.
Just one thing, see, you talked about reducing cost with the centralized thing. I think in today's again IT world, distribution did not necessarily mean adding people. That's one thing I wanted to say. But then talking about centralized management, I would add one more thing. I mean, one more dimension to it again is that you need not have inefficiency in a centralized one also, and something like this situation. If you can have with centralized power, but a democratic way of deciding, so it's possible even in a centralized. That
normally happens once in a year. I mean,
not necessarily. See, every manager, when you are deciding, you can actually take a lot of views. See, I mean, to some extent, even in a distributed or whatever way, it's again a character attribute of a manager, whether it's autocratic or whatever situation he's working in. Whenever I want to decide, I call all my people, discuss with them all pros and cons. He's ready. He's allowed to fight with me, to do anything with me, so long as we are discussing. But at the end of it, I even tell them right in the beginning that you're ready, you're free to fight with me, but at the end of it, the decision is going to be mine. The prerogative to make a decision is mine.
Excellent example.
So you're saying vision level, it is reasonably centralized?
No, I'm taking for any decision.
Somebody needs to put their neck out and take...
I'm saying even if the decision making is centralized, you can still make it democratic and avoid a situation where, it's only his decisions. You can take the views of different people, think in a different direction, put the problem upside down, look at it from all angles, and then decide. So again, it depends on the manager.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I know the case of an NBFC with about 100 branches all over India. Once a year, they have an annual branch managers conference where they do take the feedback from all of these people. Like he said, at the end of it all, once the resolutions are made, they prevail. So there are opportunities for giving feedback, for, let us say, sharing thoughts, and then evolving towards what the policies should be. But once those decisions are taken, they become
rigid.
Yes. And like you said, yes, we can have different opinions during discussion, but once we resolve, let us stick to that policy. And see, in all of these branches, it's not as though for anything and everything they have to refer to head office, no. And what has happened today is IT has been an enabler in terms of communication, in terms of real-time information of what is happening. Head office can know what is happening at the branch and so on. I think it is possible today to centralize information, centralize policies, but decentralize the managerial style. For example, in this case, the delivery of service, which customer to entertain, which customer not to entertain, how to treat customers. I mean, there can be a general policy, but picking on customers who is worthy of a, let us say, a loan, who is not worthy of a loan is something which is completely left to the judgment of the branch office.
So now, again, next question is related to decentralized. See, decentralized doesn't mean that if I have 10 line of business, it's like running a 10 different company in the same entity, right? And but something it has to tie these together, like an R&D support, how it function. But how, using the centralized approach, you make peace among those line of business, bring it together. So where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line, where do you give the loose rope and tight rope so that in a decentralized mechanisms still work towards a vision? Is it a vision is going to tie or something else?
See, there cannot be any rules like I think we have discussed. It is, I would say it depends on the person, it depends on the situation. A lot on the person's management style, I would say, more than even the situation. But I would still say that distributed decision making, power of deciding. When we talk of distributed management, I think we are talking of distributed decision making. Like you said, yeah, information can be centralized, but then finally it's available to everybody. So we're talking of decision making. Now, the more you distribute decision making, I think that's what is going to be important. You cannot have growth. You just cannot think of growth at all unless you distribute decision making. How many times can you go to this one person for a decision? So I don't know to that extent. And today the growth is so much, you just cannot manage with one person. Now, I had just one more comment about the self-managed. I think in a distributed decision making, you need people who are self-managed. So you need people who are motivated, who have discipline, and it's the manager's job again to create that sort of people who are self-managed. You have to and see who has got the right skill. Like you said, I think what you were talking of, the inner voice. What you were talking of is the inner voice. So there are people who are good at something, they just cannot do something. So the manager has to recognize that. You tell him any number of times, you train him or do whatever, but he will not do it well. But at the same time, he has got some special skill. So it's the manager who has to recognize this. Within the team, you can be strong. I think it's important that the whole team is strong, but within that team, who does what? I think this is a material.
Let's go for a quick poll. How many of you think that self-management is an illusion? Raise your hand. I mean, let's go for a quick poll.
It's a leading question, so maybe you can rephrase it.
Now, how many of you think that the self-management is possible?
Possible.
Possible.
It's possible.
How many of you think that the self-management is possible but difficult? Any
I have a point.
points?
If society is comprised of self-realized people, if a system is comprised of self-realized people, then and only then self-management will work.
How do you educate otherwise?
If the system is comprised of only one self-realized person and all others are dumb, then centralized will work. And when I am saying self-management will not work in a system, I'm seeing the reality as there are very few self-realized persons and the remaining need direction and control.
Good point. I'll ask you again a question and allow other people to give you answer. Sometimes what they do is like in Singapore, throwing garbage is a control. There is a fine system. Whereas in US, there is no garbage anywhere, but there is no fine system. But at what point you eject from the control model to an awareness model? Yes, I agree. Today the people are not aware. Will you take an education model and then make them self-managed, or continue to be in a centralized control model?
While I talk about, if suppose I take the system, very few are realized and aware.
That the other 1,000 people, even one
the job of them is they are taking all others' control in their hands, so they are not comfortable. So most of their energies they will have to invest in making all the awareness, whatever awareness that they have, spread to the entire mass. While they do that, while the top management, which we assume is self-realized, will have to empower the people to become realized and become aware. While they do that, until people become aware, it is their responsibility to hold the control and give the direction and hold the control, and then slowly release it as and when their awareness levels increases. And so, if my assessment that the current society, there are very few self-realized people around is right, then until a stage wherein we are seeing more number of realized people in the particular system that we are talking about, we need centralization, we need direction, we need control.
Okay, just to keep self-realization aside, because just take it as even trying to tend towards managing oneself. Let us assume at that level. There are going to be always, at least at this point in time, there are going to be very few people who can manage themselves fairly well. And if we want to run a system, okay, you cannot run a system with self-managed people. basically. What happens with everyone, see, if you just see, go back to the philosophy portion, you don't find too many self-realized masters sitting together and having a conference or a meeting to decide what to do. They're all in their own world. The reason is they have reached a certain stage, they know what to do, and they are on their own path. But most of society is not going to be there because the society as a whole is evolving. So as an organization, I'm going to have a very few people here and there. But if I do not educate or allow people at various levels, not just at the top, at various levels to start recognizing or discovering themselves, the trouble will become that I cannot move out of any other form of or style of management. And what will also happen is, instead of being an upward spiral, I could actually become as a society a downward spiral. Because what as a governance model I can do is only define boundaries. If I start putting laws, rules, and I don't start removing them over time and allow it to be a less regulated environment, even coexistence will become difficult, because everyone starts citing some rule to do something. So while we don't want to look at, is it an illusion or a reality, I would say it is to work in all other forms of management. We want that people should be allowed to progress towards managing themselves and then align to whatever style depending on the culture, state of evolution of the society, and so on. But if you do not allow that discovery process to start, and if we do not actively induce it, we could just end up with flock of sheep. Like there was an ad in the newspaper which said one sheep jumped off the cliff and 1,400 of them just followed, thinking that's the route. And it was a suicidal jump. And you look at that and you are like wondering what's happening. I mean, all the shepherds are just standing because they couldn't do anything, because they just thought that's the route. And then one after the other, they just leapt out of the hill. 1,500 sheep commit suicide.
Excellent.
So I think that's...
Now there is a question from somebody watching from Bangalore. I'll come back later. Divakar. You mentioned the name and...
So, Prakashan from Bangalore is asking this question. So, I am just reading on behalf of him. Looking at the industry today and in future, the average age of an employee joining the industry at work would be around 25. And this Y generation are so evolved than the senior management team in any organizations in terms of social connection, availability of information, perhaps more wisdom. What works better in terms of management style for this crowd?
Whoever wants to open it and pick up the good question.
Now, this is a challenge which bosses at all time will have to face, and right now I think it is much more. To give a very comparable situation, something which all of us will appreciate is this. Who knows how to use the cell phone the best? Your child. Right? And we have to learn from them. They pick up so fast. So, I think today's leadership style itself requires that your younger workforce actually bring in skills which you don't have. They bring in a knowledge base which you don't have. You may be strong at something else, but this knowledge base, the skill set which your younger employees bring is going to be useful to you. Now, without pretending that you know them, just see how best you can harness those skills and make them contribute to your company's growth.
So adapt. So take ideas from bottom of the pyramid, goes all the way to the top.
Right. And learn to utilize them rather than put them down. Simply because I don't know something, it doesn't become useless. In fact, that is an attitude which is there in a lot of people. Any subject that I don't know is useless. Okay. And we have to get out of that and say, whatever skill set a person brings, let me see how best I can utilize it and to complement what I already have. I think that is extremely important.
Pavis,
I think this is a valid question. In fact, I belong to that group actually.
are you sure?
Yeah.
You're 40 plus.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I'm actually a 28 plus, so I actually belong to that group. See, handling that group is very difficult, I'm saying. So, in fact, going back to professor example, child have a tendency to use more good cell phone options. But from the ethical point of view, what should you go and what should you go and see? What you should not see. From the maturity perspective, I think some guidance is required. some control is required. This is supposed to be used.
You cannot experiment everything in the company. It could cost heavily.
Correct. So yes, that young force brings a lot of good skills which the earlier generation don't have, unless it is not shaped. See, in fact, in project management, at least I have to say some jargon from PMI perspective. So in the PMI perspective, in project, they are saying that either in a management also, sir is a management professor. So the whole perception is that unless you don't shape the project, you will end up in a big trouble. In fact, the Japanese way of culture is you spend 90% in planning and 10% in execution. Rather, Indians do this 10% planning and 90% execution. So I am saying that the shaping is more important, and even the workforce which you are talking about, the shaping should done at matured, higher, central level.
One second, I'll come back. I'll raise the question. I'll just come back.
I have a question for the jury. I just wanted to know if systems and processes are decentralized or centralized, and human resources or workforce management is centralized. Because most often than not, it's systems and processes are taken into consideration for centralized. But I personally believe that it has to be centralized, as what like sir said, and decentralized it has to be from the workforce management, because we cannot control humans, because controlling human beings or employees in the organization will be a tough task going forward, because it's not the way it should be. Because
excellent question. I mean the platform or best practice, whatever you define once, whoever it is, take PCMM or ISO, whatever it is. So once you build that Six Sigma into the system, then it takes certain uniform behavior. So do you call that as, should it be centralized or decentralized? What do you call that as? Yeah, sure. Please, Prem.
I don't know exactly what you mean. If you're talking of systems decentralized in terms of the hardware, etc., I don't know if you're talking of that.
Software or behavior system.
See, I think when we're talking of management, let's talk of systems in terms of the processes. If you're saying, I would only say they should be in place. Processes should be in place, then people will automatically fall in place. And like, for example, particularly what was talked about individual being self-managed, or let me say that. See, now I think that the process, if the process is right and the systems are in place, systems and processes should be made for people, not for sages. So I think what you're talking of is, are people sages? They're not, right? But people are good. At the same time, people are good. People will normally do the right thing. But what happens is, people normally do not do the right things in exceptional cases. Now I ask you a question, why do we have rules at all? Why do we have law? You see, we have law because people in exceptional cases do not behave in the right way. Now if you are taking your mother to a hospital and she's not well, and you see a red signal and you jump that signal, no, that's an exceptional case for you. You might say, I'm doing it just today. So, but the law is there. Now law has to be there for people, because people will not always be sages. So that's why system has to be there, but so that people become sages slowly.
Okay, I think basically if you just study any animal kingdom, typically animal kingdoms don't have any rules and regulations. They know exactly where their limit stops. They don't kill more than what they need to eat. You don't have rules, but the trouble with human beings is that choice whether to do that action is lying with you. And that's precisely why you need a process. Otherwise, what could happen in an organization is, you have resource utilization and stuff like that. You have constraints. You could just have anybody walking in and doing anything. So even though I am talking so much for self-management, I think processes at a very large level are very important in an organization to let you know that these are the limits.
So this is the demerits of the sixth sense.
Yeah, I mean, the choice is yours. So I need the process to say, okay, you're crossing your limits. You may want to just stay back if it's not an exception. So that's the reason why you need the process or the rules, rather than not telling him how to do.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Mani, you had something. I'll come back.
See, when we speak of centralized and decentralized, right, both the perspectives that came across, for the individual, the self-managed or the decentralized is the right thing, right, at least for the benefit of the individual. But there's an organizational need for predictability and having some kind of a clarity for the future, which is why the things like resource utilization and forecasting and all those things come in. Right? So how do you manage the discrete or there's a discordance between both of these, right? Because one wants a centralized. So if I'm looking from a company perspective, there's this need for predictability, which is why there's a drive saying, hey, this is what we want at the top. This is what the board of directors have asked us the direction, and which we will drive as a management by objective. And the good for the individual, which is the decentralized. How do you manage this discordance between that, both of these?
See, it's like this. An institution, I treat it like as an individual. See, basically I'm a strategy professional. We talk about resource utilization all the time. So let me just put this thought process, because we are just attempting or experimenting this. As an institution, you are like an individual. You have a purpose for your existence. So one of the first questions I ask the CEOs, if your company closed today, will somebody cry? Or are they going to be happy? Now, because there is a reason for your existence, you need to have forecast, demand, resource allocation in place. You have to have all those stuff in place. You have to have some plans. You want to go towards something. But the thing is, when you tend too much towards that direction, you lose experimentation, which is what is, I think, self-managed. Let us not take it at the individual level. If I take it at the institution level, the percentage of allowing for failures, allowing for experimentation within a certain boundary is what we may call as self-management. But if we do not allow it, even at that level, we could actually become a very stagnant. We can tend towards stagnation. That's what I think. So I think it is one of the activities, that is the forecasting and stuff like that. While it comes top down, there has to be a reverse process that is also parallelly happening, where somebody is questioning it, somebody is experimenting and destroying it, and saying, okay, there's another option. Why don't you do it? And people at the top saying, okay, while I'm sending you stuff down, I'm willing to take what comes back as well. Which is what probably I think should happen.
So are you saying that who is in the center need not be a particular person, but it can be something that is required to be done in that particular
Put together by a team of people.
Yeah, it could come up from someone from bottom for the particular objective.
Team of.
If it is coming from the top, it's fine, or if it is coming from someone in the team, it's fine. As long as you have the best case in the top, which is percolating to all through this.
If it is a best practice, that is sensible for all.
I'll just leave it with one example. I always give this example of allowing, how much to allow this experimentation. You think of Edison and you think of Bardiyar. Both of them had passion. One was regulated, one was just unregulated. So when Bardiyar died, there was nobody to even pick his body. Even today we talk about Edison. We talk about Bardiyar also today, but when he was living, we never spoke about him. So when it comes to business, when it comes to certain common purposes for which we are working, I feel channelized utilization of experimentation or passion or whatever we want to call it makes more sense than that channel is what I think what you are referring to, something in the middle that acts as a conduit. It could be people, it could be process.
Excellent. So he has a question and we'll come back.
I would be grateful if all the panelists answered this thought, which is basically a concern with that at the top of the pyramid there lies greater knowledge, and later on we have a little short of it. And this for me brings me back to the distinctions that we make in knowledge management about tacit knowledge, implicit knowledge versus explicit knowledge. And I think there's a notion of implicit knowledge regardless of where in the pyramid you try to find it. But basically I'll pose the question as such, given that we are a knowledge community, and Socrates has said knowledge is virtue. Putting these two parameters, knowledge and virtue, together, if knowledge is virtue, to each of the panelists, where in the pyramid do you see knowledge is virtue available? That's my question.
Anybody wants to take that? Yeah. Can you a little bit elaborate?
I mean, there seems to be a position veering around, and which even some of the decentralized and self-managed panelists seem to be coming around to, which is basically that there is more knowledge and there is more enlightenment, there is more wisdom somewhere out there at the top of the pyramid, and there is less so and less perspective across the rest of the pyramid. From what I have understood of knowledge management, and that there is oceans of implicit and tacit knowledge available across the pyramid, and knowledge as virtue, because if you take some of the many things that have happened across the world with business, with many happenings that have happened, including in Chennai and Hyderabad, many places, if knowledge is virtue, do you see anywhere knowledge and virtue concentrated only in some aspect of the pyramid? Or is it available throughout? It's just a position that I've taken on this. And it is Socrates' statement. Knowledge is virtue, And this is a knowledge community, and I would be grateful if each of the panelists took a position on this. Thank you.
I'll take that first. I think we talked about this. I mean, if you're talking of the pyramid in terms of the hierarchy, different places. Yeah, we talked about it, that knowledge is available everywhere. And I think the, IT fellows, if some of you, most of you are IT fellows, you know it very well, that your programmer, your developers are going to have much more knowledge than you in terms of some of these things. So when I manage as a project manager or as a team manager or as a company, I know that there are people who come with very good knowledge, and I have some other knowledge. So it's a combination of all this knowledge which is put together to create a team. And it's become more relevant today because the size of knowledge itself is growing so much that there's no one person who can be an expert in everything. So it has to be that you put your heads together, create a very strong team where everybody puts together his strength in terms of knowledge, in terms of ability also, not only in terms of knowledge. And then you create a strong team. That's become so important today because of the variety of knowledge and the expanse of knowledge that is there.
Excellent. There is somebody from online.
So Kumuda from Cognizant is asking this question on behalf of RM. In this industry base where teams are not collocated and highly distributed, it should be a combination of self-managed or decentralized and centralized.
I think that is what finally we are going to propose everybody. In fact,
the software, particularly the software team, particularly, I think the software team, it's very easy to manage. In fact, the software team is the most motivated guys. The work is good, so you leave them alone and they do a beautiful job. This has been my experience, in fact, working with software guys. In fact, there are a lot of real case studies in my website. If you just Google on my name, real case studies where I've given that freedom to people. People have done wonderful job when you just let them be. Because here, when you leave them, the work itself is so interesting that they will do the work. So you don't need to do the policing that you need to do in most of the other places. This is a knowledge worker, the work is interesting, he's motivated. You can actually demotivate him by doing a lot of policing around. And there have been cases where, in one of the projects, I had most of the, in fact, all the projects that I did, there had been a record of 5 projects on time in one of the companies. All these projects were led by first-time project managers. In one of the projects, the first project was a lady, Gayatri. She was pulled out for another project. Second project, I didn't take a new project manager. I put somebody from the bottom, the next person, Tripathi. He became the project manager. He was also pulled out. I got the third one called Sarvanan. He became the project manager. See, they were also motivated. Still, in spite of this, you will see in my website, appreciation letters given by the client in the name of Sarvanan, who was the third project manager in that team. So they are good. People work a lot in the software industry. You can very easily demotivate them, actually.
Yeah, is there? Sorry, sir, please.
No, I was just going to hit Socrates back with Jiddu Krishnamurti.
JK.
No. Years ago, there was an extramural lecture by JK in the IIT Central Lecture Theatre. And typical of JK, he was all for freedom, self-realization. There are just far too many laws. It's impossible. It's terrible. He just kept. And a very senior, important lady member in the audience got up and said, but if there weren't all these laws, won't there be chaos and confusion? Very calmly, JK replied, what do we have now? This was precisely the reaction. Okay. It calls for a certain enlightenment to realize that you can't go on making rules. And one thing which is very typical of many bureaucracies is every time something goes wrong, you make a rule to set that right without realizing that this is a one-off incident, and by bringing in this rule, you are going to inconvenience 90% of genuine people. Okay. So this is a maturity, a vision which I think most of the people lack. And that is where we have to be really careful that systems and procedures are fine, but leave some room for interpretation. Don't try to define everything. It is never possible to be 100% precise. There are enough theories right from those days which say that meanings are in people, meanings are not in words. The same words that we speak, they are understood differently by different people. Okay. So
I have a couple of questions. We talk about flat organization for more than a decade now. Does it exist? I mean, where do you see a flat organization and how it is managed? Where do you see?
Yeah, I would say again, in terms of what we talked about, delegation of decision making, and so long as I again would come back to the first thing. Most important for anything is so long as you make the objective clear. I think you can have people can do distributed management, whether it's flat or whatever. So it's important that you have the objectives set very clear and the authority given to people. That's one. Number two, whenever there will have to be a central decision somewhere or the other. You cannot do without. So it's obvious that it has to be a combination. Two important things. One is, as I said, objectives and empowerment. Number two, a democratic way of decision making. So long as these two things are there, I think a flat organization or even any other organization will work.
Raj, can you give an example of flat organization that you have experienced anywhere?
Yeah, I worked only in consulting, and they're typically flat because
Very flat.
You're almost with the partner most of the time. So we hardly have 1 or 2 levels to the partner, and it's not like really like you have to get an appointment.
It's the same way McKinsey and
So, but what I think is, it really doesn't matter whether, flatness depends on the industry, I think, because you can't make some things flat. Like, I don't know if UCAL can become flatter. Yeah, Army can't be flat. Certain things can't become flat. And flat, I think, is just a trend. It's going to go away, and then probably fat will come back again. But I think the style is irrespective of that. I think, because even here in consulting, sometimes you see very certain things are autocratic, like which practice area, what they should do this year is typically decided at a higher level. You can give your inputs, but it's still decided by the partners. And then, but in doing engagements, they have democratic discussions where you can propose solutions and they'll be tested. And so I think it's a combination. I don't think
there is another thing that I would like to have something related. And every time, even you talk about system, and people are asking, even in the current generation, people are asking, does it have a workflow, right? And sometimes that it is just kind of ego saying that I have to approve this, I have to review this, I have to reject this. So it goes to multiple levels. Even in the system, they brought in that hierarchy, into the system. So what we are seeing when you're building a product, we try to make as much as possible without the workflow, which is even trying to bring a self-managed things in the thing. But do you think at some point in time the workflow will go away to some extent, or at least collapse to 1 level or 2 level, rather than even for leave approval, right? It goes to the multiple levels. Even your expense thing goes into the multiple levels. Even I want to upload a content, he's saying, does it have a workflow? Why do you bother? Let people who are reading it, like it, they say give a 5-star rating, and they don't like it, they give a single-star rating or something. There is one person cannot decide which content should go into the knowledge base or which content should not go into the knowledge base. So do you see any correlations of workflow into this kind of a behavioral, hierarchical behavior in there?
I can just add one instance to this. There was a public sector organization where a purchase order required 13 signatures before it would go to the supplier. Okay. You can imagine the amount of time that would be lost within the organization. And after the first guy prepares the note, everybody else just signs. And for that it waits on every table and takes time.
Pavis, very interesting. We have something that you are negative.
No, I think that management model, see, then all governments are working as centralized. Then you can't say that probably, except probably the communist. All government has to be a centralized way. I think again, not too specific to this question. In fact, our friend also talking about knowledge is a virtue. It's a level of knowledge is also important at each stage. So yes, knowledge is a virtue at each stage. That level. So that level is important. And see, finally, I think everybody was trying to finally conclude that I don't know, you're coming to the conclusion slide.
Nobody has given it. Right?
So I think on the lighter note, I will tell you, LP was finding a very difficult to find somebody to talk on centralized management. So finally he called me last week. I said, LP, don't worry, I won't let you down. I will come and talk you on this. So everybody, why I say this, that everybody would like to work on self-managed, decentralized way. And starting with my phrase that different stroke for different folks. I will tell you an example here. It's like a pendulum. See, the management is nothing but a culture actually. So earlier the culture was in the industrial age, it was in the extreme, top down. It should be only top down. Now people more talk on IT and now we are going to another extreme. Where is everything decentralized, self-managed, everything, put laws, control. So where it will come actually, the pendulum? It will come somewhere in the middle, right? So that is going to be the future. The future is going to be the hybrid model with a combination of both. And I will tell you, in fact, the decentralized, see, we are talking about so much G, take an example G, how distributed the recent ad in G, you can't even watch which segment they are going actually. So how it was built up? It was built up by a centralized person. In fact, Jack Welch, the CEO of the decade. In fact, professor was something talk about JK. I have something to talk about VK. VK is Dr. V. Krishnamurthy. So in fact, he is our mentor. He is, how many of you remember, he is a former chairman of BHL, Maruti, SAIL, who is a very democratic, what you can say, it's a very kind of public sector company. But here we are not talking about centralized means like Hitler, no. It's a centralized way of influence. So you have so much of people decentralized. So in fact, he made almost all the turnaround. In fact, he said in one of his statements, give me a sick company to turn around. So in fact, all the public sector takings, he taken it, he turned around. Here the point is that the centralized way of influencing, the style, our culture, our management we are talking about. So I think...
Excellent point. And when you're talking about, before getting to the conclusion, I want to make one point about the system. Was there when I was working in Oracle Asia Pacific, late 90s, and that's when they were trying to consolidate system. You wanted to mention whether the system should be decentralized or centralized. Before that, the system was all over the place. Even India had their own email server. Take a simple example. It get complicated. And late 90s, Larry Ellison came with a bulldozer with an idea. He said that all system can be happen only at one place, no matter what it is, the financials or it's content management or something. And you know what? I mean, you can even go and do search. You may be able to find that thing. They saved $1 billion by centralizing the systems, right? And EMEA did not agree initially, and he tried best because he's a CEO. EMEA person. He said that we want to be like a decentralized and so on. And he said only one thing. I'm fine. I leave it to you, but one condition. I'm not going to give you any extra budget for the system. You take the budget from whatever you make money from the EMEA customers. You take it, you spend it on there. I don't care how much you're going to spend. This is my profit expectations. He went back to Redwood shoes. Right? So then what happened? It was little delayed, but within 3 months or 6 months, even EMEA came into the centralized system. So the centralized system, yes, you mentioned about cost reduction. Phenomenal. But the negative thing is, suppose if you depend on CIO to find out or decide what you need for an R&D or what you need for your support, and if CIO is a great person, then you get a great system, or if the CEO is not a great person, you will get a subset of the greatness. So that's what I was asking another question, that if the centralized thing, the top has to be really, really great.
Yeah, I think LP on the lighter note, when I was preparing for this panel discussion, I was Googling centralized versus decentralized. I think almost more than half of the pages comes, centralized server is the best, decentralized server is not the best. So I think you also told the same point. In fact, after that I thought, okay, in our company will go and say, my CIO, I think you have to bring your server centralized. I am going to send some management review. So from the system point of view, or from the human system point of view, centralized is the best.
Excellent. Even a private cloud, centralized private cloud, whatever it is. Now I'll come back to the Q&A. There will be a Q&A session again. I mean, we'll have put it on end because that's what I'm saying. So finish like conclude whatever that I wanted to say. Then we can open up till whatever time is available. You keep asking questions. So I'm going to be very, very quick. I know. So I have 10 points to make very quickly, right? So end of the day, look at the human beings, whatever you call it. Every human being needs certain space to move around with their own freedom. It's an ego, right? It's involved. Let it be a waiter in a restaurant or a welder in a factory. Define. I think that's where I think the Steve Jobs did not follow any of the rules of leadership, but he created a wonderful company because at that point in time he used his intuition, wisdom, felt that this is the way I can make it as a topmost company. So end of the day, certain things. So you give freedom. That could be freedom based on their own capability, right? Not what they ask for. They may ask for, I want to move around the entire floor, but you will not be able to provide that. You have to watch and say, give a loose rope, tight rope, give space, but don't squeeze people too much, because then you will not get the horsepower, right? It look like just a meat, right? And that. Easy to say, extremely easy to say, right? It is not, it's very, very easy to conclude. There could be multiple management style need to converge, but again, that's where easy to say, but you cannot go and blindly converge the self-managed and decentralized with centralized. Again, at the human factor, human intuition, human wisdom, you decide till what time or what point I'm going to make it self-managed, what budget I'm going to give. If you want to experiment, I say I'll give you 10 lakhs. That's the boundary. Or I give you 3 months of time. Show me this POC. If it works, I will not throw you out. If it works, we'll adopt all over the place. If it doesn't work, move on to the next one. Okay? I'm sure that Cognizant, you also talk about some kind of some time to experiment and so on. The balancing act is vital, but it's not just 10% of this, 30% of that, and some 60% of that. Again, you have to pick that combination. Like it's not like the KFC formula. You take 20 grams from this, 30 grams from that, you make a KFC, but you have to exactly mix it in the right way. But whatever the be is the end of the case, right, there are systems that throws people out of the company. Because that's why they say that employee doesn't leave the company, they leave the manager. So when they say when they leave the manager, it could mean the management style in a different perspective. Okay, see if you ask me, nobody can manage me, personally. Right? The only person who can manage me, they get multiple out of me, is the person who respect my existence, they respect my freedom, right? And put an outcome. You'd set an outcome, because I'm not saying I'm coming here to do this for my own personal objective. But if somebody says that you're reporting to me every evening, you come and tell me exactly what you did, I said, find another person. Right? So that's very, very important. Again, I think in India, we look at the ego is very, very high. Believe me, the ego is very high. Today, people don't even come to work because they need to be managed. There are people out there who could be below poverty. I have seen people that are very poor people, they don't come to work because their ego is high. But, when you take something, your manager, that your MBA HR or your MBA finance management and so on, this is the program. You know what? Exactly this is the program is downloaded onto your mind. You go back and do exactly the same thing, right? So please don't treat the managers and the management as a robo. Replicate even the greatness. Don't make it as a robo. And make sure that they have the natural intelligence which need to work on. At the end of the day, what matters is the customer delight. We are not talking about customer satisfaction anymore. We discussed with Parvez. We moved from customer satisfaction to customer delight. I gave an example. One waiter did not bring a bowl with the water. Doesn't cost him anything, right? It could cost the customer. Whereas another person, there's no price list for one chapati. He brought in one chapati and put additional item which is called packing charge, because this is the closest to one chapati, right? So make sure that at the end of the day, unless otherwise you empower the employee, no matter what level of experience they have, as long as they're facing customer, you give the freedom to maneuver. That way, you look at Citibank employees. I don't know about India. I don't have experience with dealing with Citibank people in India. But Citibank people in Singapore, I'm a Citibank customer for more than a decade. many times they will say that, can you waive this because I came back? Simple things, right? Simple thing. They don't take even 2 seconds. We just wait for us to ask. Now, just, came back from Malaysia, right? I missed the bill. No problem, sir. We removed the, the extra charges, right? You're not even asking the same person. So sometimes that the customer delight is so important. End of the day, customer matters. And you have to empower the person facing the customer to take certain decisions, right? And our end of the day, I think our job is all he mentioned about the happiness, right? We, in the same room on the 13th of night, the last 13th night, Parvez was there. He was organizing the PMI meeting. It's almost a full. He asked the people, how many of you in the morning, every day morning and a weekday, happily wake up and run to work? You know how many hands went up? That was almost 90% full. 3 or 4 hands. Out of 100 plus people, right? 3 or 4 hands said that every day I run to work happily. So fine. I like it. Wonderful thinking. So the point is that unless otherwise you make an employee run to happily run to work, you're not going to create a wonderful company in whatever it is, I think. So sometimes what happens is if I experiment, what happens is it becomes a war zone. So if I allow Thiruvali to experiment certain things, I allow, say, Mani to experiment certain things, I have seen certain things, there's an internal fight. If I make him succeed, he will grow. So sometimes rather than making myself succeed, I make other people fail in the experimentation. It's very, very easy to say you allow people to experiment, but in reality, make sure that you are giving all the setup for success, but not all the setup for a failure. So now we are talking about the 21st century, right? When we're talking about the 21st century, we don't know many things. We don't know the external threats, how big it is. You know how Motorola collapsed. You know how Ambassador cars collapsed. You know how many things collapsed because they did not change to newer situations and newer scenarios, whatever the style may be. So make sure that you apply wisdom, manage external threats in 21st century. For that, if you have to empower people at the bottom of the pyramid, empower, decentralize, you centralize the way centralized, but outcome matters. So now, when you're talking about a self-managed approach, it could be time to train people on self-managed. It doesn't take, but for me, when I was in college, somebody talks about spirituality. I basically bully him. I said, what the hell are you talking about? Right? When I started reading JK, that was not when I was doing my college days. That was after I joined Wipro, or I was about to join Oracle. That's when I started reading JK. The first book, believe me, it was like a bouncer. I couldn't understand what is an observer and observing, messenger and a message. Like I was wondering what the hell he is talking about. So it took me some time to understand this, but that's why I'm asking a question. Is self-management is easy to say, but unless otherwise you are matured enough to self-manage, you cannot self-manage. So that's a different thing. So same points, I mentioned here, make sure that at the end of the day you measure the happiness of, while you are measuring the profitability and revenue, measure the happiness index of your employee, right? At the same time, without bringing down if somebody says, if I'm idle, I'll be happy, then I'm not talking about the person, right? You allow them to perform and measure their happiness index. One thing, ask, how happy are you? No 320 questions in an employee survey, right? And then you ask him whatever it managed and so on, right? So even in my boss, I think, gave me a lot of freedom because in 1997, I think the Australian boss created a title. He didn't even ask a permission from the top. I created a title called Manager Knowledge Systems and Services. She created a title, gave it to me, experiment, right? So that's a lot of things. Can you guess, why I put this slide? 10th point. Right? Right? Future is unknown. We don't know what is going to happen. We don't know whether we get back to our command and hierarchy model. I don't know. Whether it's going to be socialized learning, socialized thinking, we don't know. We don't know what is the future. We don't know what Wipro is going to change something which is going to create wonders which Cognizant might follow. We don't know what TCS is going to create some wonderful thing, wonderful business model, wonderful ideas, wonderful execution. If they're 60% profitable, I'm sure the other large IT companies will follow. So the simple thing is get ready. Don't close your mind, right? The many things are unknown. We don't know what worked in the past may not work in the future, and make sure that you are ready for that. Keep it open. Thank you. And I'll open up the questions to some more questions. 2 more questions. Time. Thank you very much. Once again, I would like to thank all the panelists and all the people who are watching from the other countries and other cities. Thank you all.
Yeah, I thank this knowledge community for giving this opportunity. In fact, I was more worried you were putting so much of experienced person in front of me. And I'm happy that my alma mater, Great Lakes Institute of Management, also watching this. In fact, I am coming this weekend. Let's see that we can discuss more on project management. So one thought I just want to say, see, people are very monotonous people when not like. In fact, there was a bell bottom earlier, and it was revamped again. They called as a parallel, parallel bell. So in this context, what I am saying is, though maybe centralized what looked at the old way, people are too much of decentralized. Sometimes people will also tend to go centralized. So centralized will come back, and probably that may become as a hybrid model, and that going with the future. So
closing thoughts from 3 of you.
Yeah, there's one important thing I thought could be just shared. Particularly when you're doing a distributed management, I had found, and this was my experience, luckily for me, I could actually get this done with my people, with my immediate managers. See, the best way you can really delegate is when you have built a relationship with your immediate manager, a relationship where there's a clear understanding where he has to decide and not even bother to inform you. So I was lucky, I could do this in all my places. My managers knew exactly when to act independently and not even bother to, it's so petty small thing that they need not even inform me that they have decided and done this. The second, decide and keep me informed that, such and such thing happened. I have decided, I have already acted like this. The third category is that he should not act unless he has talked to me. In which case, then I decide, I also think over it and say that, whether I found it a right solution and say either you act or no, leave it to me, I should act on this. So if you can have this understanding with your managers, your delegation is going to be really, really very, very successful.
I think I'll go with him. It's cyclical. Things are going to go over and over again. I think that's the basic rule of life. But I think fundamentally what we need to keep in mind is we compete to evolve and not compete to win. I think that's basically what is leading to a lot of styles of management, and leadership is tending towards more managing than leading today, because I think it's all about competing to win. And I think somewhere when the knowledge becomes a virtue, I think I'm just addressing that point. My stance is knowledge becomes virtue when you decide that I'm competing, evolve, and not competing to win. And that is at a very high level of maturity of knowledge. So I think constant effort to transcend that maturity level, to start understanding that without somebody else I can't lead. So I might as well have a lot of people around and allow me to lead them. So I think the idea is compete to kind of evolve to a higher level, and for that I think it's a combination.
I would believe that it's a process of evolution and civilization which should go more towards looking at human beings becoming better. Okay. I may be dreaming, I may be idealistic, but I think that's the way to look at. And so if that evolution and that elevation has to happen, along with that there has to be a lot more decentralization and empowerment. And I think that should be the way to go until we hit the peak and turn the other way. Right now I think we are still going, we need to go a lot more in that direction. And see, what is the best that we can do when we are able to instill character in people, when we are able to have a bonding with the people who work with us, and where we also start realizing, for example, so much of talk about competition. Within a company, for example, it looks like competition is the enemy of cooperation. And that is what you need in the organization, right? So, there are imponderables, there are very difficult questions to answer, so it's not one line, let's say, answer to the whole question. But I would say we should strive to evolve towards a mature, aware, wise society in which decentralization should work more than centralization.
So, thank you very much. So, I am personally thanking on behalf of community to our board member Lakshman Pillai for arranging this excellent panel discussion. So, thank you, Lakshman. And also thank you, panelists, for joining with us. And this is really going to be an asset for our knowledge community, because most of us are seeing, and it is going to be in the archive of our website. And there are past history indicates that people are watching in the archive rather than watching it in live. So I hope in the near future also this video is, yes, this video is going to be an asset. Yeah. So now I request Lakshman and Mani to give mementos to a panelist. So I request Lakshman to. So thanks everyone. The next meeting is on November 21st, and we will all meet you.